covered for me. So welcome to the guest lecture series here. Obviously, this series is a good example how we actually collaborate with our MBA students, and they are encouraged to shape their own experience and contribute to the wider learning community. So you can see this is the student-led collaboration and reflect the kind of initiative that we hope to see in our future leaders. And I would like to give a big thanks to Vandit, Ashish, and Sebastian for putting this work together and creating something really meaningful and a very engaging experience. Big thanks to Lynn, to Quali, but put everything together, enable them to actually get this job done. And I hope you enjoy this guest lecture series, and special thanks to our speakers as well. All right.
Yeah.
Ashish, back to you.
Ashish should be
Thank you
with the agenda.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So hi everyone, we welcome you all, and thanks a lot for joining in. So just to take you through the agenda in about 1 to 2 minutes. So how we have structured this is an impactful and engaging way which we want to be, and so it's divided into 4 different segments of an early stage startup, and the group of panelists that we have here will be heroing each segment, and for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have a forum open to other panelists to express their learnings and their experiences on the segment. So to start off with, we'll be talking about identifying real problems in this growing and economic world. Then we'll be looking at how to validate the assumptions that we have made on the problem, and how do we leverage that actually for our product or services to be a market fit. And then we'll actually look at how to execute it, a solution or the proposed solution in a lean way, and how to come up with a minimum viable prototype. And then we'll be seeing how to measure traction, and then how we decide to scale based on that. So over to Ashish for the panel introductions, please.
Thank you so much, Vandit. I warmly welcome all the guest speakers. To start up with our first guest lecture, who is a visionary economist and founder of Merciar Business Consulting, who has worked with everyone from UK government to multinational boards. Over 2 decades of experience, he has helped businesses save billions through his smart economic strategies. He also chaired a Westminster think tank influencing global policy on entrepreneurship and poverty reduction. He just doesn't talk about strategies, he makes it work in the real world. So let's warmly welcome Mr. Damian Merciar. Damian, over to you, please.
Hi, thank you very much for that quite wonderful introduction, Ashish. I really appreciate it. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I guess I wanted to start off by speaking about economics itself as a discipline. There's a whole philosophy behind this, which I'm just going to read out in a second, but real way, economics has sort of almost lost its way by becoming too technical. And I just want to read out something in a second where I speak about economics as applied philosophy. So it's sort of intellectual thought in practice through a moral framework. And that moral framework comes from, so everybody here, I'm sure, amongst the delegates here, obviously have heard of Adam Smith and The Wealth of Nations, but you may well not have heard of his earlier book called The Theory of Moral Sentiment. And out of that, he's then designed the idea that all that we do is not purely driven by wealth creation. Because what happens is that as we, a small number of people get wealthy at the expense of others. And believe me, I am not a raving socialist at all. I just happen, as a great British comedian a while ago said, I don't want to step over starving people on my way into the restaurant. And it kind of figures. So let me read this post that I put up, try and give a little bit of context. within the international arena as well. And you'll see what I'm saying as I go on. I've always taken it as a matter of pride to be interested in international affairs. I think as an economist, the dots you join are not sectoral or discipline-based or regional or intellectual or even psychological. I've always believed in economics to be fundamentally this: applied philosophy, the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality and existence, especially when considered as an academic discipline. And then I say, what am I talking about now? Well, I myself, I've spoken about the modern siloing of economics, microeconomics being curtailed by the rigidities of linear regression, macroeconomics being subject to the vagaries of the bond market and yield curve analysis, which of course actually, in my book, has a lot more going for it than the straitjacket of linear regression. However, that's just not enough. Economics is much more than this, as can be seen again by a conference I attended myself only sort of a week or so ago on the military build-up between China and India. And that's in the context of the ongoing action that even was occurring live between India and Pakistan. But the bigger worry here is border disputes between China and India. And as I try and sort of outline here, economics has got something to say to that. Applied philosophy, if it is to be useful, as I'm trying to argue here, is predicated on everything. And economics being applied philosophy predicated on everything. Sociological subtleties between one county and another. So the economic history of the UK, Lancashire versus Yorkshire in cotton versus woolen production, which of course was also based on geographical consideration, so water supply, this sort of thing, right down to why do I consider it necessary to arm myself against my fear of you invading me? Pakistan versus India. Pakistan culminating in becoming a nuclear state because China and India already were. These are not small things. So tensions over the China-India border. Running on, of course, to as more the traditional or simplistic application of economics. Where do I buy my weapons from? Will I get a better deal from a country that wants me to act as a proxy on their behalf in arming myself? And in arming myself more comprehensively, do I present as a more secure trading partner or a more volatile one? In arming myself, am I contributing to my own industrial development through enhanced weapons technology that can translate to domestic industry? And we're going to be seeing that increasingly more. We're already seeing it now in the adoption and application of drone technology. Will my safety enhance my prosperity or promote a rivalry in productivity and trade that I hadn't seen? And the really key point of that is the fact that other Southeast Asian nations have emerged as economic medium-level powers in their own right due to China moving up the value curve. And I say that a lot of this is sort of being condensed as a series of activities by Trump's completely unpredictable random behavior over tariff application. And I'm sure many of you here haven't actually thought about the broader application of economics. And all of those things that I've spoken about there are completely as applicable, as relevant as anything else. And I know I don't have too long, and perhaps somebody might give me a sort of 1 or 2 minute warning. But I wanted to then go into the sort of the absolute flip side of that on the complete sort of micro, small, minutiae scale. And the example that I wanted to use there is that very early on in my career, I was a utilities economist working in a regulatory environment, actually for a big engineering consultancy that did the engineering audit work for the economic regulator. And the case example I'm going to use very briefly is that of water. So water is, if water doesn't work, we die. We don't have it, or it poisons us. So this is kind of key, yeah. So all the different regulatory inputs into water are overwhelming and quite sort of astounding, really. So the Drinking Water Inspectorate monitors the quality of water. Whereas then Ofwat will make sure that you get water. But how do you get water? Through pipelines that are, some pipelines are 120 years old. And then that becomes problematic. How do we monitor the security, safety, resilience, and continuity of a water supply? So on the very small scale of applied economics, you accumulate all these costs, which is that's what something called the periodic review does. And it's a 5-yearly government mandated economic assessment to ensure that the water industry is going to work. And really difficult because this is a sort of very big area. But the example that I'm going to use there of regulatory failure, 2 aspects: regulatory failure and then regulatory capture. Regulatory failure is the fact that Thames Water is on the cusp of becoming a nationalized state-owned monopoly. Again, an element of something called moral hazard, which is where I'm sure many of us know private industry will take the risk, gets it wrong, the state has to step in and perform a rescue. But I bet you when the architects, and I'm privileged on my political side, which I don't have time to go into now, but my political heritage as a political economist was to work with the leading think tanks in economic liberalism, the original architects of privatization. And I say that because I bet you the original architects of privatization did not anticipate the removal of 72 billion pounds in dividend payments in the water industry alone post privatization. 72 billion pounds at the time of privatization would have paid for almost twice of the then existing water network to be completely replaced. So this touches on regulatory capture, and the best advocates for arguing against regulatory capture are economists. And economists, sort of the good ones, and I'd like to consider myself amongst them, join the dots. You know, they don't talk about the second or the third decimal place in anticipated inflation in 2 years' time, which is what the pure financiers do, because we want to make our broader society carry on functioning. And I think I'm probably out of time at 1:45 there. So thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Damian, for that wonderful insights. Of course, time limitations are always there, but the information and the area in which you are working with, it's quite huge, and we definitely would like to learn more and more day and day. We'll definitely in touch with you. But going ahead, as you have been working as an economist and the entrepreneur too, you spoke about the regulatory frameworks. So according to you, as you have also influenced the €1 billion policy decisions, so how the entrepreneurs, the startups or the founders can turn the regulatory frameworks into the competitive advantage instead of viewing them as a hurdle from the economist point of view? What do you think?
Brilliant question. I'm afraid my answer is not going to be as brilliant. I think it's almost impossible to break into. And that's because of something called the regulatory asset value, the inherent worth of the assets that you're looking at. We're talking about, in some cases, hundreds of billions of pounds, hundreds of billions of pounds. Entrepreneurs cannot break into that realm of financial involvement. I think the best that they can do is identify shortfalls, failure in service delivery, failure in structural rigidities, and to be very much on the ball of something called regulatory capture. Regulatory capture, which I just touched on there, is where the regulator, because of things like the area is too complicated to understand. So in my own case, I was a very young economist, and I'm adding up the value of the nuts and bolts on a given pipeline to accumulate towards something called the asset management plan. And you've got spreadsheets with hundreds of thousands of data entry points, you know, and you simply can't manage that. And then the management of that is the company itself, because it's so overly complex. And the company itself then presents this to the regulator saying, look, regulator, you calm down, don't worry about it. We know what we're doing, and here is our plan. And meanwhile, that then facilitates excessive debt leveraging, so excessive that Thames Water is likely to become a state asset with something like £14.5 billion. I think entrepreneurs with AI can try and utilize information laundering, information hoovering, try and suss out glitches in delivery. And to be honest, that would be my take on how to sort of get a foothold into what are hugely capital intensive industries. And the same applies to every other industry that is regulated.
Right. That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Damian. The answer absolutely overshadows my question. The answer is so great. So in follow-up with one last question, I would like to ask you, we have all experienced COVID-19 scenario, and we have seen the economic volatility during those 3 to 4 years across globe. So according to you, in post-COVID like situations where the inflation sensitive world is there, what trend should new businesses track to stay resilient and relevant while looking at the economic fluctuations too?
Okay, well, that comes down to honestly financing and security of financing, and sort of, I believe it's a really fine balance. And I say that because, again, I've been through and I've been personally affected by 3 substantial recessions. Lost a lot of money in the dot-com boom, and then lost a lot of business, of course, in the build-up and activity of the financial crash. And the financial crash happened because of the over-mechanization, the over-reliance on clever, sophisticated financial instruments that were themselves built on unsecured debt. So that's the downside. I think there is an upside, which is be honest. Be honest. Yeah, sort of, you can take out structured loans on anticipated future earnings. And if you can legitimate or substantiate or evidence the likelihood of the continuity of those future earnings, then those debts should be warrantable, or rather, if not necessarily actual debts, but money to be drawn on. So I think that's where, well, as an economist, I wouldn't do that, but I would want to have some input into that with either corporate accountants or forensic accountants, or investment bankers or seed corn providers, or slightly more risky, or arguably very much more risky, PE, private equity investors.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Damian. I definitely would like to come in the last, if time permits. I really appreciate your time and the invaluable inputs and insights you have given. And definitely, I'm sure all of us, the young entrepreneurs, will get the valuable lessons from it, and will try to get over it, whatever the experience and lessons you do have. Thank you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Now, I would like to move ahead to our second guest lecture, who is not a great visionary, but also a seasoned FMCG entrepreneur and a director at A&D Corporations Limited. With leadership roles at the brands like Dabur, Pharma Clinics, he brings the decades of experience in building and scaling consumer products businesses across the market. As an alumni of our University of Kent, in between 2002 to 2004, he now mentors the startups and emerging leaders, sharing insights on how to grow and thrive in the competitive FMCG world. So let's warmly welcome Mr. Dhiraj Saheta. Dhiraj, all over to you.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here back on this academic platform that has shaped so many aspects of my career. I especially I'm grateful because of the very first international sale back in the 2000s when I started my career was purely because of one of the referral which I got from one of my university friends. So I think it's a great platform that we are all on, and if we use this, it's a bridge that between the ideas and opportunities that often drives the early stages of startup journey like mine. I think I can give you an insight about all of this. Uh, you know, Let me take you back about 20 years. From and talk about more about the startup world then against what it is right now in today's day and age. The startup landscape looked very different back in the day. We didn't have any structured tools, we didn't have any data, we didn't have any of these dashboards. The only thing that we knew was talking to people and trying to experiment things. I think, over the years, I have had a privilege of working on both different kind of startup spectrum. One where I was the only employee in a cosmeceutical company, which we were building from scratch. And on the other side, it was a big, large multinational FMCG company where we were trying to get into the new markets, new zone, new launches, and so on. So now there are a few lessons which I probably want to share and see what was different then and what was different now, and how we can actually, utilize this knowledge, and the young entrepreneurs and the young startups would benefit out of it. So we say that all ideas begin with assumptions. So let's be real. Every business starts with set of assumptions. There's a gap in the market. People will pay for my product that we build, or can we actually, when we scale this up, if there's going to be any attraction behind whatever we're trying to do. So the fact remains that assumptions are not facts. What separates successful entrepreneurs from the rest is the ability to test those assumptions quickly, cheaply, and honestly. One early startup, the skincare, basically, Ashish mentioned about pharma clinics. So pharma clinics was basically a skincare company that I joined. And when I joined the company, there was an assumption that we would be going in the segment of anti-aging. Now, when we got into the market, when we launched, what the customers actually wanted was a solution for pigmentation and skin lightening. Now, the insight came not from a fancy report, or it was actually while we went into the market, we spoke to doctors, pharmacists. It was a hands-on approach where we understood this. Now, the small shift that we made from moving this segment, we became one of the fastest growing brands between 2007 to 2010. Now, mind you, this was done without any massive media budgets. It was not done. It was just done by listening, or probably the courage to adapt and change. So, this hands-on validation makes a lot of difference. Now, when I look back and when I actually think back, how difficult it was for us to, get in, because, we didn't have any of this, there was issue with the translations, when we go into new markets, or, direct reach out. I'll give you some examples there as well. Like Dabur, for example. Dabur is a huge, now it's like $1 billion company. Now, when we started, we wanted to scale that up into the European market. But the difficulties that we had back then was we didn't have a real-time translator or anything. We used to use Google translations, talking on the phone with customers, potential clients in Poland, in Czech Republic, and so on, sitting in a small office with a laptop on one side, on a phone on one side, getting the translation in. So when you look at things back then to comparing the things right now, I would urge that people should adapt and go behind this entrepreneurship journey, because and you just have to be there, understanding that over the years, since it's become more easy, if you do the right things, the possibility of success and it's more, it's easier. And while you have a platform like this, where you have access to your alumni, your other entrepreneurs, guest speakers, you can reach out and you can actually get so much more data, or probably insights of how people have done their journeys, which motivates them, gives them the insight, and gives them a place to connect and take things ahead. Now, over the years, the other thing I would want to add on is the lesson of the growth and mindset. Now, this is a bit of a personal part of my journey, that from working in a startup to now running an own startup as well as a consultancy that I'm doing. It was it's not been a automatic transition. It was built over the years with a real time learning, experimentation, and most importantly, a mindset of ownership. One of the most valuable lessons I received was one of an old mentor's ex-boss that he was. He told me that you never work for anyone. You actually work for yourself, for your own value. Now that struck with me in my life. If your role is helping you grow, stay and build. If you stop learning, stop making an impact, then it's time to move. This is what I always have kept in my mind, that I feel that when I was working back in the day for someone, I always felt that if I'm not growing, then I should move. So that mindset has helped me make tough decisions, like switching industries, moving geographies, walking away from the comfort zones and doing, creating impact. So I think this is what I wanted to actually share my own experience, and then say that use this for young entrepreneurs. Use this platform. Try to connect. Be open. Validate the market. Do validations. Validations isn't a checklist. It's just a mindset. It's being willing to ask the uncomfortable questions, being humble enough to accept feedback, bold enough to change course if needed. Don't wait for that perfect condition. Start with what you have, build with what you know. Most important, listen to the market and then move ahead. If you believe in the idea, trust your timing, surround yourself with, like even small team members. You don't need to, who share the same hunger. You don't need to have like a set of 50 people trying to create something. Even if your own friends come together and then like 2, 3 of you have an idea, you can do it. Your network is your net worth. Value those relationships. Your mindset is the true engine, to be honest. Keep refilling it, and your value will take you further than any job title ever. So the entrepreneurs have an opportunity to start early, start right now, and I'm sure we are all there to support. And if there's anything, we are always available in a forum like this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dhiraj. That's a wonderful thought you have cultivated in us. Of course, the mindset plays a major role in growing, whether it is personal or professional. So, with the same follow-up question, I would like to have for all my fellow colleagues and startups and entrepreneurs, upcoming entrepreneurs. You spoke about the systems and mindsets, and you also spoke about cultivating early on. So, what, according to you, I mean, you have helped and led the brands across the globe and the global market, like pharma, clinics, and Dabur. So, two questions I would like to ask you, looking at the time duration and everything. We all have seen the brand loyalty, and it has become very critical, especially post-COVID scenario. I mean, people are not trusting brands such as pharmaceuticals or the skin cares or the food industries, indeed fashion industries also, naming few. So according to you, my first question will be how you can build an emotional connection and repeat the trust as far as entrepreneur or the director of any company is concerned, to put your product ahead and create the brand loyalty. And second one will be what will be that one underrated trait that every entrepreneur should look into as per you?
So it's a great question. Both of them are good questions. I would say the first one is obviously since COVID and since there has been this trust issue going on in the market for brands. Now the fact remains that multinational brands dominate the segment, and it's just that people have created this sort of a, I wouldn't say it's the right word is creating a cartel, but then there's always, you'll see that there's a first mover advantage for every category and every brand or every segment that you're looking at. So if it's in the food industry, people do trust bigger brands because they've been dominating that space for long. However, having said that, for new startups, if you really believe in an idea, and when I'm saying when you really believe in idea, is basically you are convinced that if it's a food product, you like it, you love it, you would eat it, you will give it to your family. It starts from yourself. So if you believe in it and if you think that it is right, because the big brands, when you go into millions and billions, then there's for every product as a shelf life and a growth pattern. There's an organic growth and there's an inorganic growth. So when you believe, the startups come and disrupt the market because they have an idea which they believe it is disrupting the conventional way of how brands have been dominating their space and creating and holding on to that space because they enjoy the first mover advantage. The only way to declutter that and create a mark is to connect with your real audience, to connect with the guys who to put yourself in their shoes and say that, okay, is this good for me? Would I be a consumer for it? And then take it deep dive into it and create an example out of it. And don't be afraid to speak to customers. Don't be afraid to challenge, because you will understand that the conventional big guys, they are because the it's like when your base is high, then the growth patterns are they would not want to disrupt or go get into any challenges. They would be more reserved in the play. So I think that gives us an opportunity to actually scale up. So I fortunately, since the time I have started my own stuff, I've been assisting smaller players to actually get the courage and understanding, because half of them don't understand. When you go out in the world is it's much bigger place than we think. You just need to connect with the right people, connect with the right resources, manufacturers, because there are plenty of them out there who have the capacity and the capability, but it's like, the willingness against know-how. So you might be willing to do it, but you don't know how to do it. So it's just that getting out there in the deep front, deep diving into it, going to the core, finding out your right connections, and then taking it ahead and challenging the bigger boys and creating a mark. I think that is the way forward.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dhiraj. Definitely, I'm sure along with my fellow colleagues, it is going to help, especially to me as an young entrepreneur and future entrepreneur, I would say. And definitely following Damian as well as you all, Dhiraj, Lalit, and Odera, I'm definitely is going to follow your footstep and hope.
I would just like to add that, using the platform here, like great to be associated with this Kent uni.
Right.
But I'm saying that, we are all available for all our young entrepreneurs, people who want to get into the startup industry, people who just want to have some more inside knowledge, one-to-one sessions, or even bounce off ideas with us. Because I remember that back in the day, I was an expert moving from a different country, coming in here. We didn't have enough people out there where we could reach out and talk to or get advice from. So I think it's great that you guys have started this, and I would be more than happy to if ever it happens in UKC, we will come down and probably share our insights and talk to people. And we are always available. Our websites, email addresses are with you. You can share it with all the members on this platform as well, and then look forward to assisting and being a part of this group ahead as well.
Definitely. Dhiraj will definitely take that advantage. Honestly, I will be more selfish in that to take the advantage of it. Now, I would like to hand over to my friend Vandit, who is going to take care, who is going to be ahead with our rest two guest speaker. Over to you, Vandit.
Thanks a lot, Ashish. So just to make a point here, on the screen that you see, there are QR codes, and which leads to the LinkedIn profiles of each of the panelists. So guys, the participants, if you want to connect, just go ahead, if with the consent of the panel, of course. And I'll be starting off with Mr. Lalit Mehta, who is the co-founder and CEO of Decimal Technologies and Saarathi.ai, the companies at the forefront of digital innovation in financial services. His ventures focus on leveraging technology to enhance customer engagement, and streamlining financial processes. Lalit's leadership has been recognized for fostering inclusive growth and technological advancement. His entrepreneurial spirit exemplifies innovation, and we are privileged to hear his perspectives on digital transformation in today's business landscape and the industry. So, Lalit, sir, over to you.
Thank you, Vandit. I didn't realize I have done so much. Thank you for making me realize that I've been doing so much. Anyways, so I'm gonna, since the topic that I was supposed to speak on, I'm supposed to speak on is lean and MVP. I'm gonna start with how we started Decimal, and maybe that there'll be some clues in the way we started. So 2009 November is when we started. I used to live in a place near Delhi called Gurgaon. Like those of you who know India would know that, and for others, it's close. It's a city close to the national capital, and it's an expensive place. I moved to a town about 250 kilometers from there called Chandigarh, and the reason was a friend of mine used to run IT services company from that place, and it was kind of it was not costing me anything on the rent. It was kind of cheaper for me to move there and get started. And I didn't have any employees, didn't have much money to start with. What we did, we used to look at people, those who were as buffer or bench staff for that company. And we used to utilize the time of the bench staff to develop a product. And in the evening, I would remember when we were doing something in the Salesforce management side on mobile devices. And the whole idea was adoption. Whatever product you may create, the whole idea was, is it getting adopted? Is it delivering ROI? So in the evening, I would come back home and, my job used to be a contact center guy calling each Salesforce guy to just check if he was able to use the application well. It was on very regular feature phones then. Smartphones were not very popular then. So it was one-man company typically. Everything else was variable or was borrowed. Space was borrowed. The entire team which built that application was borrowed. The only thing that we were paying for was the IT infrastructure, which was like some of the servers that we had rented on internet or on the cloud. That's what we were paying for, and we had our first customer before we had our first employee. So I think the point that I'm trying to make here is, all of us typically come from technology or technical backgrounds or engineering background. And when I say technology, I don't necessarily mean IT. I mean any kind of technology, and we get too fascinated about how the product is going to look like, what features it needs to have, how I compete with the larger players. But I think one thing which is most important and the most difficult in any business is getting paying customers. Are you able to acquire customers who are willing to write a check for your product? And I think we miss out on that, and that we keep deferring towards the later part of a business, and we keep investing in our products, keep investing in our processes. So I think it's very, very important to make sure that the entire approach to business is definitely lean and MVP oriented. But the difficult question is, how do you remain lean, and how do you build those MVPs? What is the scope of that MVP? So look, I think we in the previous talk we heard that you pick up the thing that that's close to your heart, that what your mind tells you, what your heart tells you. But there's one more thing, I think it's very, very important to pick up the thing where you can play the maximum role. Pick up the things where you can leverage what you have learned in the past, that you have experienced in the past. That really kind of does away, that kind of takes away the need for you to get more people and hands, which you can kind of typically, because in the early days of your startups, you don't necessarily need capacity. You just need certain functions to be taken care of, certain mindset to be applied for certain needs that are there at a smaller scale. So if you yourself know the area fairly well, if you're more of an expert in that area and you pick up that as an area of your venture, then your ability to remain lean is much higher. That's the first starting point, is what I would say. And if you typically look at, the whole idea is that if you pick up something that you're not an expert at, if you're not somebody who's had experience in that area, then you need a lot of capacity to, while that capacity may not be utilized, but you still need that capacity to at least man that function. So that's the first starting point. So I think the idea is all of us know that capital spend, fixed cost versus operational spends. I think it's very, very important to be very prudent and judicious on what kind of costs we commit to. Whether we are committing to certain fixed costs, we are committing to certain capital spends, or we are borrowing something in the beginning to kind of build something. But at the same time, you cannot borrow everything. You also need to make sure that if you're building something which is very core to your business, which is a IP that you're creating, then you got to have that capability and that skill in your organization for the long run. So yeah, it's a call that needs to be made. It varies from business to business. It varies from product to product, but the idea is to be very mindful of that. And the next question, which becomes important, is what is the scope of your MVP? So I think if you look at the way I would look at it is the scope of my MVP is anything where at least one customer is willing to pay. I need to get to a stage where a customer is willing to pay for a bare bones product, where a customer, he may not write the check, but at least he's committing to pay. I think that's how I would decide the scope of MVP. But no, it's easier said than done. It's kind of, it's all assumptions. It's not always easy to really define what customers will pay for. And that's a challenge. So I think I would pick it next, like, what is the next step? So if let's say my next step is to go and, validate the idea or like just bounce off the idea with someone, what do I need for that? Do I need a presentation? Do I need a prototype? Do I need Figma designs, or do I need a working prototype? I think whatever minimal is needed for me to get to the next step, I think I'll invest in that. I don't want to invest for the fifth step, which I'm not even sure if I'm going to get to, or by that time, it's quite possible that my entire direction changes. In entrepreneurship, it's quite possible that what the idea that you start with, it necessarily doesn't remain the same. It doesn't necessarily kind of always continue to be exactly the same that you thought when you started to create that thing. So I think the best thing would be to really pick up the next step and see that, okay, what do I do to really accomplish the next step, and then what is the subsequent step? So while again, all of these are not easier things. But I think one thing which is very, very important throughout the whole thing, all of us focus a lot on products. All of us focus a lot on our offerings because it's easier to focus. It's something that's coming from our own creation. So we are invested in that. We are passionate about that, and we all kind of invest a lot more in that because of our mind space being invested in that. And one thing which we typically end up forgetting is the actual buyer and actual customer of that. So how much we are keeping customer in the center in everything that we are thinking helps you remain lean and build only those features that a customer would want to buy and pay for. Like, all of us kind of have phones. All of us kind of use Apple or Android smartphones. And we know that each of these phones would have thousands and thousands of features. The reality is that none of us uses all those features. All of us pay for certain features. Now, these all companies can afford to do that because they're no longer startups, and they're no longer they don't want to miss out even a fraction of a segment of the market, and they want to be able to capture every part of the market. But when you're a startup, the idea is not to go and do a carpet bombing in the market. The idea is to grab the first few customers, learn from them, and then kind of go back to build a recipe which can scale. So you're not building the recipe on day one, which is going to scale and become the largest firm in the world. The whole idea is, can you get to the level where we acquire certain meaningful customers, those who find value in what you create, those who get ROI in what you deliver of the money that they've paid to you. And then I think scaling up recipe may be a little different from an MVP recipe. It's okay. I don't think you necessarily need to have first recipe that's going to become the largest company. I think it's very, very important to make sure that we get the customer in the center in the beginning. We get the thought of how to acquire a customer, for what customer will be willing to pay. And once we have done that for a couple of customers, once we have done that for in a sustained manner for a certain duration of time, I think then the entire ability to, or need to kind of build more features, need to build recipe for scale makes far more sense than kind of doing everything early on. I think I'm going to leave at that. There are like multitude of frameworks which tell us how to do MVPs and how to remain lean. But I'm more coming from a practitioner's mindset of what at least how we have been doing it. Now, some of these may not apply to all the ventures that you may be thinking of, but this is how at least I would think of creating a lean and MVP kind of structure for building a product or building, the offering the kind of offerings that we have been working on. I'm going to stop here. I think I don't want to kind of, stretch it long, and I'll wait for the question that you have.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lalit, sir. So I do have a question here. So we have been seeing that the world is constantly evolving, and right now it's at a very fast pace. So considering that, how do you think that we would be able to differentiate with our services and in this point of saturation, and how much of a difference does it make to think about that at the early stage and while we're validating with the customers, as you said?
Sure. So yeah, truly, if you look at it, the world is, so there are two parts of the world. There is a fairly, what do you call, slow moving world. And then there is a fast moving world. The world which is, originating from nature, that's a fairly slow moving world. That's not, the evolution is not happening, at the pace at which technology is changing. The technology evolution is moving like, at a jet rocket speed. But on the other side, the entire human behavior, the entire ability to kind of, adopt what is happening in the world, that's not changing as fast. I think we need to keep both these what do you call, attributes or aspects in mind. We need to keep both these aspects in mind when we are trying to create a differentiation. So if you're really somebody who's kind of, who's creating a IP, who's creating something truly innovative on the technology side, then of course we need to be far more worried about whether it's going to be relevant in a couple of years down the line when you're when you hit the market, or like, when you're ready to scale up. So I think it's very, very important to kind of keep that as part of the consideration set. As part of your thinking process, it's very, very important that, and as rightly pointed out in like earlier sessions, today, if you look at the amount of innovation that's being done through technology, the entire need of capital is kind of much larger if you look at it that today. Whether you talk of AI, you talk of blockchain, you talk of newer technologies, I think the entire need of capital is much higher. So that aspect also needs to be considered when you're trying to build on any idea. Whether you really want to, do you have access to that kind of capital? You start with an idea which is fairly innovative, but you may not be able to go too many steps because of lack of capital. And on the other side, if you're building things around human behavior, if you're building things around the things which are connected to nature, then probably I think that itself is a differentiation today, if you ask me. I think all of us are busy building stuff on the technology side, keeping technology in the center. The moment you start keeping human behavior, human psychology in the center, then I think if you keep that as a center and creating some offering around that, then that gives you a big advantage, because the world is chasing something different today. There could be areas which are not being chased very well. There could be opportunities on that side. So I don't know if I answered your question well, but at least I tried my bit.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir. It was a great to hear insight, and yeah, it surely changed my perspective on how to look at the solutions that we build on early stages, and how important it is to first keep the human psychology and the human behavior at the center of whatever we are doing. So thanks a lot for talking about your experiences and the opinions. We're thrilled to have you here, and yeah, thanks a lot. So next we have is Mr. Odera, and Odera is founder and CEO of StayLyte, a company dedicated to providing innovative beverage solutions. So, and with a background in technology and business development, Odera has successfully bridged the gap between customer needs and service delivery. His entrepreneurial journey reflects a commitment to excellence and adaptability, and yeah, we're looking forward to hear about his experiences, his insights on navigating the challenges of entrepreneurship. So yeah, Odera, thank you so much for being here, and over to you.
Thank you all for having me. It's been truly exceptional listening to all the great minds that have preceded me. My journey would not be complete without stating that the University of Kent played a very unique stopgap for me in a personal way. I typically start this conversation saying that my life started in Kent. And I say this because at the age of 24, 25, I believe, I left Nigeria as a young graduate with a degree in computer engineering to the halls of Kent Business School. About 4 months into my program, I was pulled aside by a lecturer and asked to go see the student or guidance counselor. The reason was at the time they found it unique that in the classrooms, my aptitude for understanding or for explaining what the challenges, the problems were quite unique, but my test taking ability was horrendous. Maybe 12 hours later, a couple tests afterwards, I was told that I was dyslexic and dyspraxic. And that by itself was a wonder to them, how I barely graduated with a degree in computer engineering, or also trying to attempt to get a second degree in supply chain logistics. But what that did for me was it opened up the world to me, right? Because the first 23, 24 years of my life, I believed I wasn't good enough. I believed in so many other things. I mean, based off of that belief, it drove me to, at the tender age of 17, to believe that I was unemployable. So because I believed I was unemployable, and because my certificate or degree told me I was unemployable, it forced me to start looking at three things: human behavior, one, to truly understand what people were doing; secondly, to create an aptitude knowing that I had to generate or kill, as they would say, kill to eat. So I think my first time being an entrepreneur was probably at age 19, back in Lagos, with a couple of friends going into manufacturing. At the time, we would go buy T-shirts or polo shirts because the Ralph Lauren shirts were cool. We would buy the shirts, we would put a logo on them, and we would resell them. And very quickly, with 4 other people as being part of that process, we found out that when the profits rose, the challenges came. So business lesson number 1, understanding structure, understanding that it's good that you could find an idea, you could have something that is interesting, but if you don't put the right processes in place or having the right legal framework or agreements to protect yourself, then you might, jump into an issue. Fast forward to graduation, obviously I was unemployable. So guess what? I said, hey, I would need to do something. I sat back at the time and looked at the opportunities at the time in Nigeria, and I said, what is it that I could do? Well, 3-4 years prior, I was on the business side of the manufacturing process. I would go get customers. I would use my face, my popularity as a basketballer to get people to buy these shirts, but I did not understand the unit economics and what it took to manufacture or make those shirts. So what happened? My father insisted on what he called working backwards. I learned pretty much how to select fabric, how to sew, and everything it took to put together a polo shirt. I moved to Lagos, got some capital from family. Maybe I had enough fabric to make 500 polo t-shirts. And the plan was to redo what I had done 4 years prior. So using the knowledge of what existed before, but now to do that for myself. And this introduction is quite interesting because it talks about the market fit or being able to pivot or to scale. Well, something interesting happened. I believe a customer walked up to me and said, hey, I have a graduation from my high school. Can you make a jersey? I'm like, a jersey? Of course I can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Of course I can. How much? And I gave a number. I just gave a random number. I went back to the market and I realized that the fabrics used in making jerseys were 70% cheaper than the fabrics used in making polos. And the number I had quoted would give me a 5x profit margin. And so I made 30 jerseys. They loved it. They took pictures. They told their friends. Word of mouth spread. And over the next 3 months, all we did were jerseys. All we did were jerseys. And those jerseys partially is what paid for me to end up in Kent. So I say that to say that when you go out to solve a problem, you go out to do a business, sometimes you want to start from where you are, start from the known to get into the unknown. But the challenge is when you're stuck in trying to make it work just because you have a belief or a feeling. Those fabrics are somewhere in Lagos. I don't know where they are. And I will leave the fabrics where they are and switch to StayLyte and where we are today. Fast forward over 12 years later, we're in a position where we're looking to build upon an existing product. So I would do something just to see how many people are involved here. Show of hands if you know what electrolytes are or hydration. If you could permit me. You could use beautiful, right? Thank you. So looking at it statistically, the global hydration market is valued at about $36 billion today, with a CAGR of 5.6 growing to about 79 billion. The global energy drink or functional market is more about $90 billion, growing to about 175. Well, here's the challenge. The challenge here for me, or the challenge for us, was in 2023, I had a personal experience where I had consumed some alcohol back in Nigeria and ended up in the hospital 4 days to my wedding. 4 months later, the doctor had said, no alcohol, your liver function was failing. But being a young entrepreneur, being a young man at the time, I would go out with my friends partying. And when we went partying, we would realize that we would order bottles. And with these bottles or bottle services, they would bring things like Red Bull, which is an energy drink. They would bring sodas or water. And because I wasn't drinking, I realized very quickly that, drinking water for 3 hours while partying was boring, or having the sugary energy drinks, sugary sodas by themselves would leave me like jittered, leave me like with a funny feeling. And just drinking core energy drinks 2-3 down the line would leave you palpitating or with a very, feeling very horrible. And in a moment of imagination or thought, I said to myself, why not use electrolytes? Electrolytes are something that we would typically consume at the end of the night when we were, dehydrated or partying, or when we were going to the gym with products like Gatorade and the rest of them. But how come human beings do not consume electrolytes socially? And so I went to my best friend at the time, AI, and this was maybe 3 years ago, so ChatGPT was pretty new. And I asked him, and before then I went to Google and I said, hey, carbonated electrolyte drinks. Nothing showed up. Canned electrolyte drinks. Just one showed up. And I said, wait, it's not possible that in 2023, with the thousands of beverages, with the thousands of things in the world, that a canned or carbonated electrolyte did not exist. So, problem statement. The second thing I had to say was, why didn't it exist? And so then the research goes. You start to research, you find out that because, to have full spectrum electrolytes, there's sodium involved, there are other components within that could cause corrosion and balancing, and someone just thought that, hey, you should hydrate while you do one thing. But because of personal experience, which is my experience, I put out a think tank, reached out to about 50 people, and I asked them a very simple question to validate. What would you do if you had a beverage that was clean and healthy, that could standing socially to allow you to feel comfortable if you were not consuming alcohol, or even if you were consuming alcohol? And thirdly, what would be the perfect flavors or flavor offerings? With these 3 problem statements, we were able to put together what we have, StayLyte, which is a carbonated electrolyte beverage that solves 3 things. One, it's the first drink that is clean. Secondly, it's a lifestyle beverage, meaning that it has a social connotation to it. And thirdly, if you do drink alcohol, it's the perfect mixer or chaser. So when we talk about the concepts about scaling, or we talk about how do you build traction, it starts with, first of all, adding value. And value, we mentioned, is defined by the customer, or is defined by utility. A lot of beverages, a lot of businesses these days chase trends. We live in a world where attention spans keep going shorter and shorter. You have a windfall where you have influencers and you have celebrities creating everything from alcohol beverages. We know some of them to foods, to drinks, and they have a quick runway, and they make as much money as possible. But when you decide to build a product, or you decide to go into the market to solve real world problems, one, to add value, number two, and you think from a larger market size or market, I call it global, thinking global, having a global worldview, but acting locally. For me, my the USP is I was born in Nigeria, educated in England, and trained in the US. Those are three huge markets with three different buying behaviors, with three different perspectives. But the one thing each of these people have in common is a careful life, personal life, a careful community in their own way, and also wanting to have a good time. By tapping into this psychological understanding and also understanding where the business is, where people are going, right? There's a huge shift from consumption of alcohol to more functional behaviors, to more people outside post-COVID. I heard a gentleman speak about the world pre and post-COVID. And if you look at the numbers, the global consumption of alcohol is declining. And now we have other forms of beverages coming, whether it's the THCs, the non-alcoholic beers rising, and understanding 10, 20, 30 years from now where the market is going, you can then position yourself. Now, how do you measure traction? What is your cost of acquisition? For us, when we started the business, we went to market. Our primary goal was to go D2C, direct to consumer. We found out very quickly that when you go D2C or e-commerce, your cost of acquisition is slightly a bit higher, because now you're going through ads, right? You're putting money on ads, you're going through influencer marketing. How do you know if you have the right influencers or you have the wrong influencers? Very quickly, we pivoted to activation and being what we call B2B. Taking the beverage online and putting it in real life spaces and places where people could get the cans. I call it getting the cans to hand to lips. In doing that, we were able to do three things. One, we could get real life feedback from customers. We could also get user generated content, because they would then take pictures, get videos, and tell their friends. And thirdly, we cut down that cost of acquisition of spending money on ads to actually giving a can, which, the USP of the unit cost per the can is much lesser. And then we direct them using a barcode at the back of the can to the website. The third thing is retention. Retention is, are they coming back to buy without a code or without having the free can, right? So there's a funny thing from a movie that it says the first one's always free, but then what happens when it's not free? Well, what we've come to understand is, depending on the flavor profile of the beverage, because we offer three different flavor profiles, depending on the psychometric of the customers, because we have 4 different customer profiles or avatars defined, we start to understand the behavior or buying patterns of those customers. There are those who are interested in getting case packs, who want to do the reorder. There are those who want the convenience of just going, grabbing, and going. There are those who just want it in their beverages as a mix or as a cocktail. So then we start to build upon that. And the fourth is referral. Now, referrals come from, you could have discount codes, which we put out, and we have people get their discount codes, because now for them, they're getting something in return to get something. And then they're organic referrals. Just 2 weeks ago, we sponsored a men's wellness event out in Dallas, where there were over 300 men who came and ran the 5K, and they also had free checkups for them. We set up a tent outside. We had about 4 cases of our beverage, a case is 24. And what happened was, we had a lady who, was dehydrated and was looking to get water, and we offered her a code StayLyte. This lady went and she brought 9 people. At the end of the 3-hour event, she had 3 cans of StayLyte by herself. Referrals. Because she enjoyed it so much, we had a situation where a gentleman was cramping after running the 5K, and there was Pedialyte. There were other forms of, hydration or medical things they could give them. Someone was like, let's get him a StayLyte, let's get him a StayLyte, let's get him a StayLyte. That for us was validation in real time. And the fifth, of course, is revenue. Where at the end of the day, what keeps the business going is your ability to generate revenue. And then to define how much of that revenue is kept versus, your gross revenue, your net, or your EBITDA. And that's where I have my team helping me, because that's not my superpower. So traction for us is being able to grow, not necessarily just how many cans that we sell, which is one of our KPIs, or how many venues or how many businesses that we get into. But the third one is how many times people start to understand what the value of the brand is, the vision of the company is. I make a joke that for me, when the business being extra successful is walking in a park someday and seeing a gentleman or a lady tattooing the StayLyte logo on their arm. When that happens, then I could truly measure my traction. And maybe I'll come back then and take a picture and share that with the world.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Odera. It's a great story and little motivation for us current students here, and coming from an alum, it's much more powerful in a sense that going from not actually not being able to be employed, and then here you are with StayLyte. So it's I would say it's an incredible journey. The question that I had for you was around your go-to-market strategy and activations. You obviously spoke about that. So one thing that I want to know is, it's coming from a personal experience of mine. So we did a study around Diageo, and it's low and no alcohol beverages. So how would you say that in the beverage industry, the competition builds up?
That's a great question.
If I was a beverage company owner and moving into an emerging market where all the major players are actually going to, how do you make a difference?
That's a great question. I will say this, that once you think about the Diageos of this world and the LVMH, I believe, or LVMH of these worlds, they have, the first gentleman spoke about he spoke about policies, or Damian, he talked about like policies and going against the conglomerates who have the billions of dollars in revenue, and identifying a problem, and in finding that problem, you could then find a market fit. If like that was something major that he spoke about. And I would borrow his reasoning, but I will also say this. 1% of 1% of a billion is a lot. If you think about market sizing, 1% of a billion is a lot. Now, the challenge with multinationals or the bigger companies, and I was trained by them, right? So my journey actually started with working with a Fortune 500 to a Fortune 100 to a Fortune 5, to then transitioning to a startup, to a unicorn, and to a startup that, and then going to do mine. So I pretty much went through that journey. And I would say this, when you're in a huge ship, like a colossal ship, it's difficult to pivot. It's difficult to pivot. But when you have a society where the behaviors, the consumer behaviors, the consumption behaviors, the economic behaviors are switching so fast, the world has probably changed 3 times since 2018. Whether it's how we consume, how we interact. Pre-COVID, everyone was outside. During COVID, they said everyone was inside. Malls were shutting down. No one was interacting. Stores didn't matter anymore. We had the boom of the Chewies of this world. It was all D2C. And then post-COVID, we're going back outside, and now everyone's running, right? So the behaviors of human beings are pivoting so quickly and changing so fast that what these companies end up doing is acquiring startups or acquiring smaller businesses who have made investments in that area to add them to their portfolios. But for us who are smaller, who are nimble, who have a good understanding, one, of what the problem statement is, right? It's one thing to go build a business out of necessity to earn a living and to make money. It's a different thing to go out to solve a problem that you understand very intrinsically, and you can find 1% of the population who also have that problem, market sizing. And then you build a community or walls around them, and then they go with you. So what happens is, I believe that in 9 years, someone's going to offer me a couple $2 billion to buy me out, or we go IPO. But the challenge then is, how do you remain nimble enough that you keep your eye on the ball in solving that problem? Because as long as you understand what the problem statement is, or as long as you allow people to tell you and give you feedback in real time, then you can make things work versus the bigger people. So you talk about differentiation in the market spaces. Well, what's so interesting is Coke, Fanta, Sprite. Dark, yellow, orange, clear, white. Almost every beverage in the world has some sort of different version of what's inside of it. But in terms of when you pour them in a glass, they kind of look the same. It's all marketing. It's storytelling. It's feelings. It's what's inside. Some people put more things to get you addicted. Some people promise you wellness. Some people promise you, life after life, whatever. Ours is balance. StayLyte, we say, hey, we care about your balance journey. It's whatever you want to be, whoever you need to be, whether you're a DJ at night, a professor during the day, a parent in the middle, an athlete on a Saturday, whatever transitions, wherever you go, we'll meet you where you are. We're not even going to change who you are. We're just going to enable you to keep doing what you want to do. And that's our own journey. I can't speak for the other people.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Odera.
That's what StayLyte is. So I think my last question to you, though, is how do you StayLyte?
How do I stay light? I walk around a lot. The campus is very open. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So thanks a lot.
Campus.
And I would like to open the forum now to the audience, and please put up the questions in the chat if you have any. I mean, we have a very strong panel here from all of the every industry that we have. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So yeah, please guys go ahead. Yeah, Sebastian.
I think Sebastian. Yeah, Sebastian has something.
Hi. Well, firstly, thank you very much for bringing in all of these very interesting guests. I guess I've been very overwhelmed by the amount of information that has been brought up. It's way more than I was expecting. So thank you. A lot has been discussed about MVPs and human psychology, something I'm very interested in. Entrepreneurs often start with bold ideas, most of them grounded in assumptions. Some others, like Odera and his t-shirt business, start with a simple idea, but just enhanced by a competitive advantage. I was just wanted to dig a bit deeper into converting assumptions into meaningful solutions, how this requires emotional intelligence. In our MBA journey, we've been discussing in design thinking the process, how it begins with empathy, getting back to human psychology, and deeply understanding the user's needs before defining the problem, something that has been, again, mentioned by Odera. And so, in that context, how should we think about the appropriate scope of an MVP to ensure it both tests assumptions and also respects the complexity of real human needs? If anybody would like to pitch into that question, I would be very thankful.
So yeah, Lalit sir, would you like to?
No, I think I shared my thoughts on that. So I think it'll be good to understand and hear from others on the panel, because I'm not going to speak much different from what I spoke earlier. So I think it'll be good to hear from others.
Yeah. So Mr. Dhiraj, can you say something on this?
I think Odera addressed quite a few interesting things, and I think while Sebastian has the same sort of a thought process where starting a journey where you're trying to identify and then conclude if it's actually a real term scalable thing that you're looking at, solution, or defining that is this going to be something scalable or a need of the hour or need. To be precise, I missed out a part of his question because I was just switching on screens and all. But however, the core remains the same. I think once you deep dive into it, and it's a self-evolving scenario where when you are in it, You have to keep adapting and understanding, because sometimes getting into it, you might have a pre-notion that, this is something going in a certain direction. But once you hit the ground and you see the reality, when you speak to people, when you get the feedback from the market, it constantly changes and you have to keep adapting. There's no one fit solution, specifically when you are trying to launch and create and check the MVP. Even the created route map or roadmap, or your offering that you're trying to do, like Odera was saying, that you went in with a t-shirt which was one pattern, and then eventually you found somebody wanted a different sort of a thing. That's a change in the direction of what you had in the first place. So how quickly you adapt and how quickly you address the scenario, I think that would be the key. And as as long as you can see that, like I always say, that you keep yourself as a consumer, and you see that, will I be the one who would be a part of it, buying it or spending on it, or will, similar to the question that I said, will people pay for this, what I'm trying to create? If you feel that it's going to be there, then I think you should move ahead with the first stage, and then things start falling in its place. And but I would just say that, you have to be consistent, and you need to don't just shoo away from a negative feedback or a pushback from the market, or maybe the first week or first month or first 3 months there's no sale or no nothing. So you have to be prepared that this is a journey, and you will see that it's not a straight road. So as long as you're aligned, you will face experiences and you'll be fine.
If I may add to that, and thank you so much, sir. If I may add to that, I'll speak on StayLyte, because I mean, it's something quite interesting. When, so in creating a beverage, you first of all have to come up with a name, go through you have to create a formula, right? Yeah, you have to create a formula. And in creating a formula, you can go any which way. One of the things that I learned early on is to start with an assumption. Start with an assumption, and then following, I mean, you could call it first principles, the rules of first principles, or in supply chain operations, we call it root cause analysis, or in project management. Try to understand without, you go for an assumption, which I think it's the same thing in science. It's always that in science, right? And then go with the first principle route and cut it down to its barest minimum. Understand truly, why doesn't this exist? Why would someone want to pay for this? What problem am I trying to solve? Remove your assumption. When you've gotten down to the point where you have no more questions, or you believe you've gotten down to the bare, bring in other eyes and ask them and have them go through some exercise. My dad said something which is funny. He said that to me when I was 21. He said, "You can," and I'm paraphrasing. He says, "You can learn a lesson losing $1,000, and you can learn a lesson losing $1 million. The lesson is the same, but one costs more, right? The lesson at the end of the day is the same, but one costs more. So in my $1,000 mistake, I bring in a team, a small sample size of individuals, and then we validate. We validate very quickly, right? And then we set parameters. And if we hit or meet those parameters, we then go to market. But going to market doesn't mean you spend, it might cost you a bit more, because now in terms of scale, just the smaller you produce, the more expensive it is. But it's better for you to start with a small sample size, to go out into the market and then collect real feedback. Sometimes the feedback you get might be the most interesting thing. I remember the first 100 people who tasted StayLyte, someone said to me, it should be sweeter. It just doesn't have that aftertaste that I'm used to. Now, emotionally, that got to me, because I felt like, oh my God, they don't like my beverage. But then I realized that what they were referring to was, the high fructose corn syrups or the sucrose, and not being used to the natural tasting or feeling. So that negative feedback was actually positive feedback that validated one of the things that we wanted for the beverage. So creating having basically taking out your emotion and putting it on paper, having said, here's what validates, and letting the data speak for itself at that point in time also helps. So I would say having good emotional intelligence, also understanding how data works, and being very good at knowing how to pivot between both. I've seen great people who are great operators who have so much technical abilities and zero emotional intelligence. And I've seen people who have great emotional intelligence who are like almost like poets and zero technical knowledge. And eventually they get too passionate. And if you don't have both, getting someone, a co-founder, bringing team members, bringing in people that can help you balance them out, or using the great, amazing tools that we have now.
Damian, I think you wanted to say so. Can we have your thoughts, please?
I just didn't fully understand the question, Sebastian. Could you just nail it a bit more closely, please?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I just got lost and dragged into an introduction. So basically, discussing MVPs, which is something that most of us in the program are very interested on. About, when you start, you have an idea, but then you have to really materialize it. How should we think about the appropriate scope of an MVP to ensure it both tests, assumptions which have been discussed, but also respects the complexity of real human needs?
I'd say just by getting it out to market, honestly. And then, we speak about, so forgive me, I had to sort of almost recalibrate my brain. I did my MBA at Kent 33 years ago. And I sort of owe the genesis of my career to my time at Kent. Good and bad. Good in that I learned business skills. Bad in that I got taken completely for a ride as an economist. I did my internship for my MBA, and quite a long story short, I did a piece of important economic analysis on the regional economy, and basically trying to illustrate a really important element of dysfunctionality that was then put directly to the European Parliament and the UK Parliament. And on the back of my own work that I did, getting the train from Canterbury, which one, Canterbury West, Canterbury East, I'm not sure, to Dover, and walking around Dover docks and interviewing 100 owners of small businesses. And those small businesses were small businesses in an industry called customs brokerage that now we don't have. We didn't have, now wrong. We now do have again because of the exit from the European Union, which is like deeply dumb. And why I say that is because my product is intellectual output. That's my product. So in a sense, it's sort of almost my ability to sustain my own thinking represents, and there is an economic terminology for MVP that's not the typical business one, which is what? Minimum viable product. MVP is marginal value productivity, which is the first point beyond the redemption of all your costs. So it's almost after the business interpretation of MVP has been applied. What is it you're doing? Why are you doing it? Can you continue to do it and receive marginal product or minimum viable product? But the product in the economic sense is productivity. Yeah, and productivity is always linked to sustainability and continuity of the delivery of that service. And again, so I think I'm different to the other panelists in that my service is purely intellectual rather than product based. I mean, hopefully whatever I contribute will allow you to continue delivering your own products. But my own product is that. So I'd say literally put it out there in the marketplace. Odera, his product testing was, does somebody want to buy my t-shirt? For sure. You know, and then found out that not only do they want to buy his t-shirt, they want to buy the jersey, and then they love the jersey. And then for somebody to say, give him a StayLyte, that's fantastic. I mean, you're already done, yeah?
That's right. Thank you so much, Damian, for that wonderful insight. One last question, as we are running out of time. On the behalf of everyone, I would like to ask you all, anyone can answer, or all of you, you are welcome to answer one. Success stories are inspiring, of course, but what shapes us as a great leader or entrepreneur is that one moment, that one thought process which really twist your entire life, and at the same time will bend you to that level wherein people will either, I mean, they will go in either way, that either they will shape it or they will break it. So as per you all, what is that one moment that has shaped you to be a great leader at this moment? Because this is what exactly we all are struggling right now.
Can I go first, and then I'm done, and you lot can, we can finish up.
Absolutely.
I believe massively, and I sent this thing to Ashish, which is a picture of me.
Sorry, Damian, we lost your voice.
The mute button is exactly where I lean my elbow. Total pain in the ass. Right.
Yeah.
So 13 months ago, and I just sent this picture to Ashish last week of me 13 months ago with my face covered in ice. Now, I'm a polemicist. I'm an intellectual. What the hell am I on about now? What I'm on about now is the application of resilience. Yeah. So I'm also an ex-soldier. I'm the only economist in this country. And I know most of the big names. And we're all egotists, you know what I mean? So you meet with the idea of, can I beat this guy? What they don't know is that I'm an ex-soldier, so I can beat all of them in a very literal way, you know.
Yes.
And I say that because I use that power to feed my resilience. So if I've had a pitch turned down and we haven't got time, I've done work internationally that I've had stolen. Because in a sense, the concept is the idea that you're offering, and somebody bang, that's it, your concept is gone. So I use physical endurance to help feed my own resilience. So if I've had a beating professionally, I'll go out and climb a mountain. And in order to climb a mountain, I need to be able to climb a mountain. So fitness, health feeds in directly. Odera, ship me some products, man. Do you know what I mean?
I got you. Okay, let me jump into some already laughing. This is truly inspiring. Lynn, I want to personally appreciate you for, not just putting this together, but giving me the opportunity to be welcomed back into the Kent Forum. I mentioned that I never graduated. I graduated, but I never walked the stage. So hopefully someday I'll come back to Canterbury and I enjoy the cathedral. But that's just the journey, right? In my undergrad, same thing. I graduated, I never walked the stage. And then my master's program, I graduated, I did not walk the stage. Just a few days ago, I got this shipped to me. It's the plaque from Amazon for being on the bestsellers list for a book that I wrote, which started when I was 15, because I started writing because I couldn't communicate, because I was dyslexic and I couldn't spell, and I was misunderstood. And being misunderstood, the only way I could express myself was to write poetry. And 20 years later, that's that on the wall, right? So I guess that's a great, I mean, how else do I say, from your failures, right? From the things that may seem like challenges or disadvantages come the strongest advantages. I remember reading Losing My Virginity as a teenager, by Richard Branson. And at the time, I didn't know he was dyslexic, but I just knew that there was something about this guy that, that changed my world. 6 years dropping out of high school, starting a paper route. And I was like, I want to be him someday. I want to be like him. And, today I have my own beverage. He had his, and who knows where we're going. So identifying true failure, identifying in people's stories and being bold enough to share your story, his story, the truth, history, his story with others, and showing that you surround yourself, whether it's physically with people or if you don't have access to people, with books and information that enables you to keep going. I think that will help champion past failures. And, failure is part of the process. It's the journey. And I would say to anyone here who hasn't read the book, read The Alchemist. It's a very interesting book. It pretty much helps shape your philosophy towards this journey or this path of entrepreneurship. And the world is big, right? The world doesn't start or end in the UK or the country you come from or the US. The world is huge. The market is enormous. Just because you tried something in one space and it did not work at that time, does not mean that it will not work somewhere else. So keep your worldview big. And drink some StayLyte.
Yeah.
Okay, let me add on right now. Firstly, as we all said, I agree that we come from all professional backgrounds and we've seen quite a lot of things happening on our own sides, own experiences, and I still go and give credit to Kent Uni because, like I said, when I was saying the first international sale, and I have been fortunate to have had a chance to travel because of my work, going into 65 countries, supplying goods, products, FMCG lines, and opening and establishing, territories for the people that I've worked with. And the first one, like I said, was actually one of my Kent uni friend who was a junior to me. And then he met me in the streets of Manama, called up my name saying that, how come you're here? And we were there to train the Gulf Air guys we were selling on board. And then we found that he connected me to someone back like a pharmaceutical guys. And then that was our first international operation we started. So this network that we have, that is a great platform. And then while you're doing that and when you're scaling things up, you actually forget at a point in your life that you feel that you are actually driving and everything is working in your favor. But there are times in your life when you actually hit because when you change your jobs, when you change your thoughts, if you're not an entrepreneur and you're working somewhere, you believe and you change patterns, thinking that what you have seen in the last 5 years is going to continue with whatever new projects that you go in, and you see the same sort of response. But that doesn't really work in the real term, because whenever you're working with any company, the consumer or the customer that you have is actually giving you the attention because he's making some money out of you. He's gaining something that he's buying from, and he's making money out of that when he's selling ahead. So when you change your profiles, these things change in life. So where sometimes you get into equations where you actually get real-time shocks that no, things are not the same. So it could be sometimes, like I said, changing jobs, or sometimes that comes down to your health. That at when you're all aging and you're growing, you don't realize that the amount of man hours that you can put in, the amount of travel that you can do, sleeping actually in flights and not at home, and growing in the journey is something will change over a period of time. So, and when it starts affecting your life pattern and your health, that's when sometimes changes and you try to amend. And, I'm sure Odera will see this, that, now that things are growing and you're expanding, and I'm sure I will probably connect with you and help you out, expanding this into the different geographies. But what we all understand is in that process, we have to somewhere step back and balance out things. And, so, it's great so I have had some instances, and I'm sure at some point when we connect back, we will go in more details and more stories, like we said, how we did door to door back in the day and so on. It's good, and we can actually learn and inspire others and probably help others and help each other as well. Because now also I'm constantly, right from inception of helping clients to actually even do basic things like registering their own brand creating logos to actually getting the product in on the shelf, and then driving that offtake from the shelf is what we do. So I think there's a lot more what we can actually offer from here, but then it's great, and it's just that there are too many things to talk about and there's not enough. So I don't want to get into details of it, but we should connect back, and I'm sure we all will gain more out of it. But
Definitely.
Well, hi everybody. I'm just conscious that we're over time now. It's been an absolutely brilliant lecture. Thank you so much to our 4 guest speakers. As we know, 3 are alumni, and we will put you all in touch with each other if you're not, and tell you about some of our alumni events that you can get involved with. Thank you to all the guests that are still online. I know a few people had to leave too, so they have jumped off. But really, really appreciate you coming today, everybody. And if anybody has got any questions and you want to put them in the chat, we can perhaps pass them on to the relevant speakers so that they can answer them. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you again at our next MBA guest lecture. We do 1 a term, so we will send you invites through if you want to come and join us. The one in this autumn term will be on the subject of sustainability, and then February, March time, whenever International Women's Day is, we focus on women in leadership, and then entrepreneurship in the summer term. But you're very welcome to attend all of them. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all.
thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Guys.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
Bye then. Be well. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye. Cheers.